Hey now, all right. It's Rob here from Rob's School of Music, and we are blessed to get to hang out and talk all things shred with Mr. Andy Wood. Hello, sir.
Hey, Rob. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing okay, man. You know, I do most of these interviews from the school. I got the fancy mic, the whole setup, and I'm on AirPods today, and they're driving me crazy because they're disorienting. But otherwise, I am well.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're all learning how to do technology together. You know.
Oh my God, it's been such a ride. So for us, so I have a music school. We're in a town called Suffern, New York, which is like 35 minutes or so outside New York City. And once the pandemic hit, we pivoted everything online, and we've done close to 5,500 virtual lessons in the last year. So it's been absolutely incredible. And I've been doing these interviews every week since last April. So you're actually my 1-year anniversary of interviews. So
nice.
That's really exciting. And you know, the first thing I try and ask everyone is, I think it's super exciting to understand like where our heroes come from. So like, was there a particular record or a show or something along the way where you're like, that's what I want to do?
My grandfather got me started playing music when I was about 5 years old, 6 years old, maybe. My cousin and I were the same age, and he got us started playing fiddle tunes and Bill Monroe music and all of that kind of good stuff. Listened to a lot of bluegrass. I played mandolin most of my life till I was about 16 or 17. And yeah, it was just kind of always in the family and always around. And then there was just one day when I was, a teenager, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna ride this thing out and just play music as long as I can play.
Cool, man. Well, play you do. I mean, it's so exciting to be scrolling through Instagram or YouTube and then see videos from guys like you where it seems like you can play anything.
Oh,
and then to see the mandolin stuff, but then the electric guitar stuff and just the chicken picking and the shredding, and it's so musical, but at the same time so virtuous. How do we say this?
Oh man,
full of virtuosity. Yeah, dude. I mean,
I feel like I'm still such a student of the guitar and music in general.
Well, actually, that's the best way I think to look at it. One of the being that we're a music school, I tell my students all the time, just because my name is on the sign, it doesn't mean I don't have things to learn. And I think with guitar and music in general, there's always more. And a lot of our students, they're looking to Instagram, and they find themselves being almost intimidated by what they're seeing out there. And I'm always saying, you got to choose to be inspired by that, because that's some magic sauce, and you got to drink it down nice and slow, and let these guys inspire you to achieve that greatness.
Yeah, Instagram is an interesting thing for sure. I think social media is interesting for sure because I think all of the guys that kind of come out of the same graduating class, if you will, as me, guys like Martin and Tom and those cats, Instagram didn't exist, but we were getting together on like Harmony Central and Petrucci Forum and things like that. Instagram and social media is interesting because it can provide so much positive good stuff, and it can provide so much negative good stuff, and it's just how you choose kind of to digest it. It was interesting. I've been, through the pandemic, I haven't been able to tour, but I started this web series called The Woodshed. It's just like kind of a weekly thing from right here in my studio. And I had a mental health expert and assistant professor over at University of Tennessee do a episode with me regarding the topics of mental health and social media and consumption of those kind of things, because it's so double-edged. Like I love getting on Instagram and seeing these old live clips of Van Halen in like 79 and 80 playing and full of fire and brimstone, and then I also love seeing my heroes like Brent Mason post little nonchalant videos from the studio, or Andy Timmons just playing and being Andy Timmons, and random Eric Johnson videos or whatever. And I love discovering new players. Like there's a ton of jazz bow guys that I'm not a bebop player, but I dabble, and I dabble in some of that stuff, and I really enjoy seeing guys like that play. However, there's a lot of fake in it, I mean, I don't know how to say it. There's a lot of guys that are like miming over their stuff and it's all edited to death. And it's just, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with editing. That's not what I'm saying. It's like you making an album, you're making a live video that's like a concert series or, you know, whatever. I mean, like editing has been a thing since, you know, the dawn of recording. But I think it's the presentation as if in something's being played in real time, presented to you as the viewer, as the consumer, and it's not, and you're not being told otherwise. In fact, you're being led to believe that that's one take, and that's all one motion, one sit down motion. I think that can be very unhealthy. I think that can be very discouraging for young guys, especially guys that are trying to play and they're like, well, how'd that guy do that? Well, the reality is he didn't do that, you know. You know, if you want to see live playing, then you look up some of those Austin City Limits. You know, you look up George Benson at a jazz festival. Like that's what a human being sounds like when they play, and not just a human being, like the top of the food chain, the apex predator of guitar players. You know, it's like that's what it sounds like. And then when you get the, you know, the hyper compressed, hyper edited, one note's been punched in at a time, it's like, of course, that's discouraging because it's not real. Yeah. And frankly, and as a musical fan and as an opinion, nothing but my opinion, and everyone could take it or leave it, but as a fan of music, that kind of music and it's hyper edited, it doesn't do anything for me. Like it doesn't bring me any kind of enjoyment, you know. It's not one of the boxes that gets checked, as my buddy Travis likes to say. Like when I think about the things that gets checked, it's like, you know, I want groove, I want tone, I want chops, I want, you know, interesting melodies, I want interesting songs or whatever, or big fat hooks. That's something I look for in everything. I want a big fat hook that I can remember long after the song is over. But what's not in that list of things that I require is like this artificial intelligence, hyper edited style. Like stylistically, that's not that cool to me. Even with heavy, you know, I think a lot of that starts with either house music, EDM music, because that's the nature of it being built on a laptop, which is cool. I'm a Skrillex fan, you know, I like that stuff. But I think, you know, in metal, when editing became really over the top, it kind of castrated some of the coolness that like you get from albums like Pantera. You know, there's a swagger to that. And to back up my example, someone recently they put Running with the Devil. They took the stems and they put it on a grid and time aligned it, and it sucks. It sucks. It's not good. It's like just at the very beginning when the first starts, it's like all gang. It's like all super square and in time, and when you get in and start doing that thing, you lose vibe, you know. And I think that's something that I'm always looking for, because that's what's in all of my favorite records is vibe, you know. And it's like that magical extra thing, and you know, even in things like I'm a big Killswitch Engage fan, and a lot of people don't really realize that, you know. I like Avenged Sevenfold. I like a lot of, you know, I like some of that stuff, even though it has nothing to do with what I do. Even they have a swagger and a coolness where when you pan the guitars left and right, it's not the same guitar. It's not copy and pasted across the spectrum. You know, I'm looking for that attitude, you know. It's like, I still want that Jack Butler attitude in my music, you know. And I think that comes from playing bluegrass my whole life and playing acoustic music, because that attitude, when Mark O'Connor takes a solo or Bela Fleck or Tony Rice take a solo, it's just dripping with attitude, and it's not punched in, and it's not all the notes are different volumes. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a MIDI file, and you know. And I think to tie it into what your students may experience is when they get on Instagram, it can be very intimidating when something's presented as if it's real and it's not. And now on the flip side, I respect anybody's artistic vision, and if their artistic vision is to make hyper edited music for only robots to consume, then that's awesome. I applaud that. Hey man, you know what your lane is, you know. But I also know that that's like a big plate of onions, and I don't like onions, you know.
Dude, you just said so many brilliant things. I'm overwhelmed by it, honestly. I think that a lot of times, and I don't want to shit all over Instagram guitarists, but I was watching a guy today, and it remained nameless, but you just see the guitar, and it's disgustingly fast, and it's sweet picking, and he's on the bar, and it's just he had a bad edit, and you see his hand jump, and it's sped up. The whole thing is clearly sped up. So I'm like, you know what? Let me check the work here. So you try and find a live version of it. And a lot of these guys, there are no live versions because they've never played live because it's this product, you know. And I've had on this very show, I've had Andy Timmons and just Richard Fortas a few weeks ago, and it was the same exact conversation.
Richard is one of my favorites too, because Richard, when I talk about vibe and swagger and attitude, like his A chord just sounds cooler than everybody else's A chord, you know?
Oh yeah, and it's the low slung guitar and the
and two, outside of the visual image that Richard portrays, you can hear it in the way that he approaches the strings and the way that he plays and the delivery of the notes. Like, it's all there. You know, I think that, to quote my buddy Ben Eller, one of the things he says a lot is these guys don't play standing up, and it shows.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it's true. It's completely true. So if someone were to come to you, and I know you have the Patreon page and your stuff, and we'll link all that up when this reposts and on the podcast and stuff too, because you're just putting out some amazing content, and I'm very appreciative. Just the accessibility, you know, I think just to be able to pick the minds of people who are out there and live the life, been on the road. You know, we're going to talk about your signature guitar and pedal and stuff as well. But if someone were to just start picking up the instrument, a big thing that we struggle with, because at the school here we teach all different instruments, but particularly with our guitar students, they put up a wall when the word theory comes up. And what is your opinion? And there isn't a right or wrong answer, because I've had literally a 50-50 split from everyone I've spoken with. But what would your opinion be if someone didn't want to know anything?
I think knowledge is power, and any kind of knowledge is power. It's powerful to have. I played for 15 years before I even knew what scale I was playing in. And then I went to the University of Tennessee and got my teeth kicked in for a year and a half, 2 years, wrapped my head around some theory and some knowledge. And again, I still feel like such a student. This week I was, you know, watching a stream of videos on how to improvise more freely over giant steps. I mean, like, I'm not going to play giant steps. It's something I'm going to play here at home for fun and work on, but it's not going to be in my live set. You know, that's not the kind of music that I deliver, but I'm still working on it. You know what I mean? And it kind of goes back to that, like that simple sentence that I said, where it's like knowledge is power. And I don't want any barriers preventing me from having a musical idea and me not being able to execute it. And that can be a technique thing, and that can be a theory thing, both of which in too heavy of a dose can harm your playing and become the wrong focus of your playing. I know guys that have a ton of theory that haven't spent a lot of time on their hands, and their note delivery's not got a swagger to it. It doesn't have a vibe. And I know a lot of guys that have a ton of technique that can blaze up and down the fretboard that can't play over a 12-bar blues, and me hear the chord changes. So like anything, you know, it's just in what are you trying to do with it? And I think the only reason theory or sweeping or any kind of advanced anything, whether it be technique or theory, I think the only reason it becomes intimidating is because it seems like it's a really far distant goal that one can't achieve. And a lot of times we build barriers to make ourselves feel better and go, oh, I don't need that to play great. So-and-so didn't have it and they play great. I mean, sure, that's true. Like I guarantee you, like Stevie Ray, I don't know unless there's some kind of closet recording, but I would bet heavily that Stevie Ray Vaughan can't solo over the jazz standard Cherokee. But I'd also say it never even mattered. Like, he hits one note and it's like, well, there you go. That's greatness. That's timeless, great legend icon stuff right there. And I think knowing your lane and looking for what it is that makes you happy on the instrument and looking for that musical satisfaction, that's the path to enlightenment as far as happiness and like enlightenment on the instrument. I know I deviated the topic just a little bit, but that's kind of like,
it's great.
That's kind of what I look for, you know, is like, yeah, any tool that can help me do my thing and help me be me better. But also it's like remembering, it's like, what is my goal? And I don't want to sound like too high and mighty. If someone plays at the local, Wild Wing cafe on weekends and they just want to play Crazy Train and Deep Purple songs, and like, dude, do that. Like, that's awesome. Like, every time I go to under a normal circumstance, not pandemic year, but every time I go out and there's some cover band playing a bunch of ZZ Top, I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, it's like, it's kind of getting into the idea of liking more things at the end of the day than not liking, spending your energy and your time enjoying instead of tearing down. You know what I mean? Like that all is related to the wall in front of theory in my mind. I know it's a long answer. So
it was a great answer though. It was an absolutely great answer because it was educated and explained. And I can't agree with you more. So you got it. You win. Don't worry. Let's get nerdy on gear for a second. So
yeah,
you have your signature instrument's fantastic. And then you also have the compressor pedal as well. What's the process? Because a lot of people I've spoken to, everyone kind of has the different story as to how they got to their signature instrument. So what was your process and story?
I think this ties into maybe another topic that we might hit on, we might not, which is one email that I get a ton, which is like, how do I get an endorsement?
Right, yeah.
I think really just a signature product is at a tip of the spear of getting an endorsement, right? So all this stuff's kind of related. And I think the simplest one sentence answer is play the stuff that you like. I'll tell you my personal story. When I was coming up in my early 20s, I was playing in a rock band called Down From Up, and we were, on the verge of, trying to pretend to be somebody. We were touring with some cool bands. We were touring with, Seven Dust and bands like that. It's a heavy rock band. And I had to take out a loan against my car to buy my first professional rig. But I tried a bunch of different amps, and the Diesel Herbert is one of my all-time favorite amps, especially for hard rock and metal. And so I bought a Diesel half stack, a TCG system, and 2 Anderson guitars. And that was a very healthy price tag. And I bought flight cases for everything. And it ended up being, I can't recall, maybe 16 grand, 17 grand in gear when it was all said and done. And I took the loan out against my car. I was like, I got to have this stuff to go do what I think matters. And noticed, if you will, that I said Tom Anderson guitars. That was my first exposure to super boutique instruments. I loved those instruments. Fast forward through the existence of Down From Up, I seeked a 24 fret guitar, and Tom didn't offer that. And about that time, there were rumor mill of John Suhr offering a 24 fret guitar, and I had never played a Suhr. I did notice that Tom and John were good friends, and I was like, well, these guitars look a lot alike, so I had a buddy that had a Suhr, so he brought it over, and I was like, wow, these things are, it's the same kind of thing from a different place, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to be degrading to either builder. I'm trying to say that they both build on a super high level. You know what I mean? Like Ferrari and Lamborghini, like they build on a really, really high level. And that's what I was really after, was really high quality fretwork. That's a primary thing that I look for, and resonance in an instrument, great neck joint to body joint fit, things like that just like a top end sports car. Like that's the things that I'm after. And I also look for vintage vibe because I like that tone and both of those. So anyways, John started making a 24 fret model, and I was like, well, I'll order one. So at that moment, I had enough money to order one. I went out to NAMM to pick it up. I was actually going to play in the Diesel booth that year. And I went in the booth and played and jammed with Scott Henderson a bit, which is still like crazy. And, I started my relationship with John by buying his instruments, and I bought several. I think I bought 2 or 3. And then it was one of those things where they flew me out to make videos, and the relationship started. Like, it was very organic. And I think that's the most important piece of advice I could give anyone. Fast forward, through the years, my career grew, and I got to do some really great gigs and have these really pinnacle moments. And, I actually asked John to build me a 24 fret Telecaster style guitar. And he was like, no. So we went back and forth for a long time. No, not gonna do that. So finally it turned into a point where he's like, I'll build one if you'll just shut up. If he's like, I'm not gonna make it a production model, blah blah blah. We're not gonna do anything. If you'll just be quiet, I'll build one. I was like, okay. And he's like, what color you want? I was like, flat black. Don't stress. Whatever. So came out amazing. And fast forward, next thing you know, career goes well. It's like the guitar becomes a signature model, and the signature model became successful, and we offered a third color. And now I actually was just talking to him this week. We've got some cool things planned in the future, and now there's a compressor pedal, and everything stayed the course because I like John's guitars. Now I've had offers from other companies. I don't think that's really some big secret. I think that's very common. If you have any artist roster in anybody's fold, you got to imagine that somebody else is going to try to send an email and be like, hey, have you tried our thing? It's like, that's completely common. It's very small. And I'm friends with companies that I'm not on their artist roster. Like, it's a small world. It's a small industry. So it's best to, think about it in a high tides raise all ships kind of manner versus, some of the sentences that I see from guys online are kind of funny. Like the whatever is so much better than the whatever. I'm just like, I mean, play what you like and then just worry about what kind of art you're making. Like, because in the end of the day, the most important piece of the gear is on the other side of the instrument cable. That's the piece of gear that matters. So you can have Andy Timmons and Eric Johnson, any guitar on this wall, plug them into any amp on this wall, and it's going to sound like Andy Timmons or Eric Johnson. Now, it may not be exactly their tone, but once they hit that first phrase, you're like, oh yeah, there it is. We did this woodshed camp, and we all shared. One of my big heroes is Brent, and Brent played through my amp, and it just sounded just like Brent. I was just like, well, there you go. It's no secret. But yeah, guitars are interesting, and I play the guitars that I love. Like, John builds the instrument that I really love. Obviously, I have other instruments that aren't in that lane. John doesn't build a 335 style guitar. And in my opinion, for what I've been playing, I really like what Collings has done. Now, would I like a 60s era Gibson 335? Of course I would. Everybody would like that. And I think that's another thing to keep in mind. If I showed up to a gig and had a 50 something no caster, like, John would never be mad at me for playing that. It's a piece of American history. I think John would want to check it out. It's like, that's kind of another thing that I think that's really important, is surrounding yourself with people that still love it. And there's nobody on earth that loves guitar more than John, especially you start talking about like Tres Hombres and Leslie West and Mountain and, that kind of thing, and Tweed amps and Les Paul Juniors. Like, that's one of the first conversations I had with John 10 years ago, and I think that's important, is to be around people that love it. And all of that is related to the signature model. Like, do you want to have something with your name on it because you think it brings some kind of validity to your brand, or do you want to build something that's really good and something that fits your playing? You know what I mean? My guitar may not fit a lot of people's playing, but it might fit a lot of people's playing. You know what I mean? And to me, my concern was, I want to build a great Telecaster style inspired instrument without the shortcomings of a traditional Tele. And that to me is the hill joint. I think that hill joint's a little archaic, and John fixed it.
That's awesome. Dude, I couldn't agree with more with almost everything you just said there. One of the things at the school, which I really wish I was at today to show you would see it, is we have Strats, we have Les Pauls, we have all, lots of different amps, because I want all the students to have the opportunities to try these different things. But my thing is PRS guitars. I've been working with PRS since 2007.
Love them. I have 3.
Oh, they're incredible. And similar thing. I was buying their guitars. I was a fan. I was touring, and then met Win at NAMM one year, and just the ball started rolling. And we've had this, I know where I stand in the tier of people, but that's okay, because they treat me like everyone else, and they're just incredible people. But I let my students, I grab, PRS off the wall. I'm like, here, try one of my guitars, and their mind is blown, with the quality of these instruments. I think that's important to be showing people, especially, as a beginner musician. So many people will grab, a Amazon.com $59.99 special, and the strings are this far off the neck and stuff. So letting someone touch, a true work of art, like some of these instruments are. I had never played a suhr guitar until the last NAMM show that there was. That was like on my list of booths to check out. I was blown away by the quality of their stuff. So it's true.
And too, I'd jump in and say everyone over at PRS, they love guitar. Like Paul himself loves guitar. I've got buddies on that roster. You know, Tremonti's a buddy. Mark Lettieri's a buddy, and they've all got PRS stuff. Emil Wurzler, a fabulous player. I'm a big Jimmy Herring fan, and he plays PRS. It's like everyone in that fold loves guitar, and I think that's one of the things to keep at the priority of if you're looking for the right instrument. But the most important thing when looking for the right amp and the right instrument is nothing else than if it speaks to you. You know, does this speak to you?
Completely agree. Yeah, that new Mark signature one looks beautiful. I have my name on the list waiting, but
cool.
But dude, I can't wait. So I see you got the wall amps back there, diesel and all that stuff. A common question that I try and ask as well is, what's your thoughts on modeling technology? Because I've seen you do the videos with the fractal stuff too. So okay,
I love it. I think we live in a era of amazing technology. I have the new universal audio pedals. I have Strymon pedals. The Wampler Terraform is down here. I've got a Fractal XFX3 over here. And it's not because I'm trying to acquire and amass this wall of gear. It's just like everything is just a different tool for the job. And I look at myself as maybe I'm an architect and my job is to build buildings. And you can't paint a room with a shovel. You know, you got to have the different stuff to do it. I mean, of course, my opinion, someone could agree or not agree, but I think Fractal, out of the modeling companies, they own the effects lane.
Like, on my hat today. Yeah.
I mean, like, everybody can make stuff sound good, but Fractal's delays and verbs. Like, everybody makes stuff that sounds good. I mean, the amp sims plugins. There's amazing amp plugins everywhere. I think Neural DSP is doing some exciting stuff. I think Kemper obviously has got a big legacy of what they do. I think Line 6 Helix has got some exciting stuff. I love the fact that Line 6 offers a Helix that's like this big. I think that's really cool. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, if you just need some really great reverbs and really great delays, and you got a modeler, I think the Fractal is great. And I've toured with the Axe 8, man. I did I'd say 80% of that LOCASH tour. They didn't want amps on stage, which is becoming very common in Nashville. A lot of guys in Nashville don't want amps on stage, and got to use modeler, you know.
Yep.
Or you have, you know, hopefully the gig is huge and you can, you know, do what you want. Like with the Flatts gig, it was so big. I had 2 412s and, you know, I had a refrigerator full of stuff, you know?
Oh my gosh. Gear. I think, you know, as guitarists, gear becomes sort of this black hole we can fall into. At the school, I have a big case in the front. It has all my pedals, minus like the super boutique ones. And I let the students take them out like library books. So they can experience. And I think that's so cool to just have access to stuff. Because now everyone can watch the videos, but the tactileness of twisting the knobs and hearing how it changes stuff, I think that's, you need that, you know?
And 2, videos only go so far in a good way and a bad way. You know, a bad player can make a great pedal sound not great, and a great player can make a very average pedal sound amazing. I'll be honest, if you gave Sean Tubbs or Pete Thorne, you know, a piece of cork and some bubble gum and some shoestring, they're going to figure out how to make it sound amazing, because they're like the MacGyvers of tone. Like literally everything they do and everything they play and everything they demo, they make it sound so good, you know. And that's not a detriment to the companies. That's like a quality to Pete and Sean and guys like that. But then I've seen other channels where guys are, you know, not Sean Tubbs and they're playing the exact gear that I have in this room, and it sounds meh at best, you know. Again, you put Sean Tubbs behind the driver's seat. You know.
Yeah, that's another thing too with the videos, you know, maybe circling back a bit to the social media illusion. Like if they have that piece of gear mic'd up properly, you know, it's going to sound totally different than if it's just off, you know, the iPhone speaker or microphone picking it up. And that's sometimes confusing as to what you're actually getting. So I think it's definitely important to get out there and play the things that you're interested in.
And I think that's important too with the modeling thing. People are like, they get used to the modeling and then they actually play a real amp, get used to the modeled diesel or the modeled EVH, and they play the real one in room. They're like, oh, it's so stiff. It's like, no, it's not, man. You're just hearing, and it's not bad on the modeling side. It's just, you're at the mercy of the end of the equation, which is the IR itself. The IR of the cabinet, you know, is it being modeled with a 57? Is it being modeled with a 121? You know, what are you hearing in real life? Because when you hear an amp in real life, you're hearing it out of the speaker. You're not hearing a microphone on it. You're not hearing any, you know, preamp love or anything like that that's in the recorded back end of the signal chain.
Totally.
So that's another set of variables, you know.
That's the thing also with guitars, you know, when someone starts out, they're like, okay, well, should I get an acoustic or electric? I'm like, oh, you know, well, we can talk about that. But then it's like,
what do you want to play? I say, what kind of music you want to play? Like that.
Exactly.
There you go.
But then they get the electric and then they start to like it. And they're like, I think I want to change the pickups. Oh, maybe these strings should be thicker. Oh, my cable is longer than it needs to be. And all these things matter. And it's like, to a non-guitar player, that's like, what? And like, no. Trust me, that keeps you up at night.
I think we love to do it to ourselves too. We love it. It's like a guy who's got an old 60s muscle car. He wants to keep turning wrenches on it. It's never done.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
You know, we love it.
All right. If you were on a desert island, right, and you got to take one guitar, one amp, and one pedal for the rest of time, you have unlimited batteries, you have power, you can change tubes, all those things. But just like you're one and done, I could, you know, turn the lights off with this.
I've got unlimited resources for it.
Yeah.
I would probably take a Suhr Bella. I would probably take a Fractal FM3. And then I would probably take one of my signature guitars and go from there. Maybe that black till it's got humbuckers and single coils. Or, you know, I'd probably want to trim if I had it forever, because I can't imagine sitting on a desert island and never playing Van Halen without never again. So maybe that would be it. I think that's a bit cheating saying the FM3, but I would run it into the power section of the Bella and skip the preamp and have that for my high gain super shred tone, and then have the Bella for the pure, you know, thing with just the delays and verbs from the FM3. So yeah, that's how I do. I'd cheat.
Let me tell you, that's a well thought out answer. So that's definitely not cheating. That's being smart with it. So I'll accept it.
I like too many styles of music. I can't imagine just being married to one rig for forever, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, let's see. I got my question here. This is when I always mess up the words of it. So I know we discussed, you know, if someone was starting out on the instrument, but if you were to give advice to yourself at the beginning with everything you've picked up now, with the genres you've gotten into, and, you know, literally like you today to you, you know, beginning you, what would you tell yourself?
I would say, Andy, spend some time learning these intervals and get a head start on it. Thinking intervallically really opened a lot of doors for me from an improvisational and compositional standpoint. I would also say, Andy, start writing earlier in life. And I would also say, Andy, you know, listen to singers more earlier in life, you know, those kind of things.
Cool answer. That's always a hard one, because it's like, what you know now, who would you be now if you knew it then, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I like, you know, the path that I've been on, so I wouldn't deviate it too much. I would just say, hey, learn some more knowledge about intervals earlier, you know, and that's from a communication standpoint. You know, when I was starting out, I wasn't able to communicate with other musicians because I didn't have the linguistics. I didn't have the grammar. And then when I went to college and I started assimilating some of that, it made writing and communicating to other players a lot easier. And I also really think writing is valuable, like,
clearly,
because that's an expression. You know, improvisation is like writing a solo in real time, and improvising is a big part of what I love. And writing and putting out a personal statement is, to me, the most valuable pinnacle thing that any player can do. Whereas a very young Andy would judge value on if they could pick it apart with the record, or if they could, like, can you play the impossible thing with the record? Yeah, but I didn't realize that was somebody else's statement. And like older Obi-Wan me is like more, it's like when you're watching Phantom Menace versus Revenge of the Sith, it's like you can see the change. And to me, that thing that I think I value now more than anything is someone's personal statement. Like I want to hear them, I don't want to hear it's impressive to get online and see some kid playing flawlessly through Erotomania or some Dream Theater thing. Like that's awesome. Hey, that's so cool. Or see some killer version of Guthrie Govin's Fives. But at the end of the day, it's Guthrie Govin's Fives. It's his statement,
Dude, I completely agree. There's other guitar teachers within the school, but my big thing when I'm working with someone is I'll give them a piece to practice, whatever it is, working on modes or something that's, a tier above. And I always say to them, like, look whose name is underneath the name of this piece. It's my name because I made it. I don't want you to play it exactly as you see it on the page. I want you to catch the vibe of what I'm doing here and create something of your own with it, within those sort of parameters. And that always intimidates a younger player because they're like, no, tell me what to do. I'm like, well, I kind of just did, didn't I? Do what I'm saying to do, but don't do exactly what I did because that's not your voice, your statement. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah, music from one end to the other, from the gear thing to what we're talking about right now, I think the whole thing is about exploration and discovery,
Yeah.
Some of the most rewarding points of it.
Yeah, man. All right, I got one more sort of theory, music related question, and then we get into the best part of the show, the random rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So my last question in the theory realm would be, maybe it's already been answered in a way, but I'm going to try and hit it from a different angle. So I think a lot of guitar players, when they do start to try and understand theory, and I'm very similar. I toured right out of high school, and then when I went to school, that's when I went to a music degree, and same thing. And I literally still have nightmares of Dr. Richard Source yelling at me in front of the class because I didn't know what the hell was going on. It's like, how are you on this major? I'm like, I play guitar. I don't know. So how would you perhaps, I'll say lubricate, but that's not the right word, but just make the information easier for something like modes? I feel like modes just, from a guitar perspective, can be so intimidating for someone who's just getting into that. To me, that's like when you're stepping above just.
Man, just don't worry about the semantics of names of things and worry about what it sounds like. And I would say if you have trouble understanding anything from a modal standpoint, go back to the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And if you're trying to discover what a Lydian sound is, raise the fourth. Boom, done. And think about it from that kind of angle. I think a lot of times when you get on Google, especially, or a lot of traditional academia, they teach laying one scale on top of another scale and playing point A to point B from a different starting point. I think that's super convoluted from an improvisational standpoint, and it makes your mind have to jump through a bunch of algebraic equations just to get the point done. And by that point, the chord change is already gone.
I completely agree. Yet again,
if you're looking for a certain sound, associate that sound like flat 7-1. That's you really got me going. First two notes have really got me going. 7-1. If you're looking for, like I said, Here Comes the Bride. I think that's like a fourth, right? I was like, the Lydian thing, man. That's The Simpsons. And look for it there. Look for sounds and then memorize those sounds. And then if somebody says, "Oh, what word is that?" Be like, "Who cares? I can play it."
There you go.
I mean, it's like my buddy Travis Toy is one of the most musical, mutant, super omega powered beings I've ever met, and he doesn't have a clue about whatever name he's using, but he's a fabulous steel player, and he just equates everything to a major scale. Boom, done. You can argue all day long. What key is Sweet Home Alabama in? You can battle it. Is it 1 flat 7/4, or is it 5/4/1? Like, really, at the end of the day, who cares? Can you play and make something awesome over it? Can you play? Does it sound cool when you play? And by that, I don't mean shredding your face off over the chord changes. By that, I mean, can you play a solo that just sounds good, that connects to another person? You have two levels, two different paths to go on. One is like achieve mutant level speed, technique, and chops. And the other is be Derek Trucks. And Derek Trucks doesn't equate speed, doesn't equate vicious sweeping technique and tapped arpeggios and all this stuff. But I guarantee you, Derek Trucks is going to smoke pretty much everybody when he takes a solo. You can give Derek Trucks one chord for 2 minutes and he will bring you to your knees.
Yeah.
It's just like, so, I mean, really, it goes back to what is your goal, from a musical standpoint? What's your statement? Because that's what matters. Is your statement to say that, hey, I can play this thing that so-and-so played? If so, that's awesome. That's cool for you, But like for me, it's like, I want to hear so-and-so be so-and-so.
Totally, man.
I don't want the second-rate version of Steve Vai. I'll just go listen to a Steve Vai record. We've been blessed with a lot of his music, And I'm not saying not pull from your influences. If anybody hears me play, they're like, well, that's the Brent Mason stuff. Oh yeah, there's the Eric Johnson thing. Okay, now he's doing the. It's like, yeah, I mean, I've got my influences on my sleeve, but the thing that I'm after and the thing that I'm chasing is to sound like Andy. Like, I want somebody to just instantly be like, yeah, that sounds like Andy's playing. Yeah, I bet that's Andy. Like, that's what matters.
1000% agree.
To me, anybody can have a different opinion. I mean, it's like, that's why I love the guys that I've been listing all night long. Like, that's why I love Mark Letary. Like, dude, he just sounds like Mark. Like, that's what I want to hear. Sean sounds like Sean, Like, could I snap my fingers and immediately sound like EJ and Van Halen and everything? Of course I would. That would be a great parlor trick. But I think even if I had the infinity gauntlet to do that, I don't think if I did, it would be fun for a few minutes or a day or two. But at some point I would still circle back around and be like, all right, well, what's my statement?
Yeah. Dude, I can't say anything more than I agree completely with what you're saying. I think that's probably one of the best ways I've heard that angle explained. And that kind of sums up a lot of what I try and do in my teaching and what I try and, pay it forward to the next generation of players. So to hear someone at your level thinking on the same wave, that's super validating to my perspective. So thanks.
Yeah, I feel like it's all just, Travis and I have talked about it a lot. I feel like we're all on the same path. Like the guy that's shopping at Guitar Center, the young kid, he or she shopping at Guitar Center, and they don't even know how to hold the guitar. They're on the same road that I'm on. They're on the same road that Eddie Van Halen died on. It's just different points in the journey. It's not like all these different roads running parallel to each other and it's laned out and it's like a versus competition, because it's not, man. Pat Metheny and Eric Johnson are walking on the same path,
That's inspiring right there, though, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. The endlessness to it, I think, can be can definitely get you down some days. I know when I have a bad music day, I have a bad day. Like if I go to the instrument and it's just not there that day, oh man, it beats me up. And nobody bats 1,000. And when I have a flubbed day or a flub an outro or a flub of I'm just digging around at a session and I can't capture a vibe or a tone that I like, man, that ruins my day. Yeah. But it's because I love it so much. I go in my, my video game room. I got to, mess around on Twitch and stuff. And if I play bad on my video games, it puts me in a bad mood. I like to, play well and express freely. It's always the worst feeling in the world to have something in and you have barriers that prevent it. And that's why, let's circle back around to that original statement of like, man, knowledge is power. Anything that can prevent those barriers and those walls, I think leads to a happier place of enjoyment,
Yeah. There was this John Petrucci quote that used to be on like my MySpace profile way back when. And it was
MySpace. Yeah.
Yeah. But this was like what I validated myself by this quote, and I'm going to bastardize it now, but it was something like, you know, the greater the vocabulary, the greater the expression, something like that. And
yeah, I like that.
yeah. Awesome.
And also, it's like, also, again, I have to, because I'm a fan of such, and I'm going to tread lightly here, simple music, because that's definitely not the case. You know, the blues, from a harmonic theoretical standpoint, can be a simpler form of music, but it's extremely complex in the nuance and the linguistics and the personality and the thumbprint. And so I listen to a lot, I listen to a lot of BB King, man, Billy Gibbons. Like, Billy Gibbons is not playing over nuts changes at light speed, but name one other person that sounds like that. Nobody sounds like Billy, and everybody in every bar in America covers, Sharp Dressed Man, it's like, or LaGrange or something. And the same can be said with all of them, man. Freddie King, like, everybody, right? And it's like, so there is a point of focusing and enjoying nuance and looking for signature nuance. This is something I teach at clinics. It's like, get everybody in the room to play an A note on the B string, and you'll find out the guy who has been playing the longest in the room will play the coolest version of an A note on the B string.
Wow.
Chick Corea had a really great statement. You should experience, I think it was either Chick Corea or Bill Evans. I don't let me misquote, but it was a piano player, and said, one note can be a complete musical experience. And if it's not, that's where you need to focus. Don't worry about trying to assimilate more power in more notes if one note hasn't been a complete musical experience. And that's been, maybe that's something I would tell the younger version of myself, because the younger version of myself was really hungry for chops.
I love it. I think that you've provided so much value across the board, and I truly appreciate, just all of it, dude. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to do my game show now. Ready?
Let's do it. Let's fire it off.
All right, so it's a series of this or that questions. You don't have to justify your answer, but you can if you like. It's all music related, nothing weird or political. Ready?
Yeah.
Humbucker or single coil?
Yes.
All right. You're the second person in a row who answered that way. Les Paul or Strat?
Yes.
Okay. Strat or Telly?
I would be lying if I didn't say Telly, but yes. I mean, I like, they do different things, man.
I know, that's why this is a terrible game.
That's a terrible game.
Les Paul or SG?
Just for the fun of the game, I would play Les Paul.
Okay. Right. Tremolo or hardtail?
Genre specific.
Flip a coin.
Give me a genre.
Yeah. I don't know. If you were to just grab a guitar right now, which one would you pick? You'd pick
the one closest to me, because I trust all of these instruments in this room with my life. The closest one to me, ironically, is my black with a trim on it, and sitting right next to it is the whiskey with a hardtail. So that tells you the two most important instruments are right there, and they're both telly shapes. So if you said, Andy, play rock, I'd be like, tremolo. Andy, play country, hardtail. Andy, play jazz, hardtail. So turns into that game. I like too many styles of music.
Well, but honestly, I mean, that's again a super educated answer, because it's not black or white at all.
Yeah.
24 or 22 frets?
In genre specific, but in general, probably 24. Obviously, if I'm going to go with a blues thing, I would probably go less frets. I would go with, like, the old school 19 or 20 or 21 frets, like the old school stuff, if I'm going to be doing that blues thing.
Okay.
Just to keep me out of that kiddie range. Ain't no money up there.
That's true, man. No money to be made. Medium or thin medium or thick pick?
1.5 millimeter.
Oh, okay. 9s or 10s or 11s, I guess.
10s on a Les Paul. 9s on a Telly. 11s on Les Paul. Everything fluctuates depending on how much I've been playing and how strong my hands are at that moment. In general, I like the tone of 9s on a Tele. They're snappy. It's kind of got that Albert Lee thing going on.
Very cool. Very cool. If you were to grab a bass, would it be a P bass or a jazz bass?
P bass.
Nice. If you were to grab an acoustic, and I know these do two very
Martin.
Okay.
Dreadnought. And then immediately try to play Tony Rice licks.
Fair enough. For amplification, if we're going super classic old school, Marshall or Fender?
Genre specific, but yeah. If you're gonna go super classic old school and be like, Andy, come play on this Don Rich, Merle Haggard gig, I'm taking a Fender Deluxe. You know, but if somebody says, hey man, we're gonna play a bunch of Cream era Clapton, I'll be like, give me that Plexi.
Yeah. That's what, some of these are like, they're so different, but it's okay. All right, we're on to the effects.
It looks cooler than a Marshall though. No amp has yet to pass the coolness of a Plexi on a 412. That is the coolest looking amp of all time, and it probably will always be the coolest looking amp of all time.
I can't argue.
It can't be argued. Like, it cannot be argued. I love the way Mesa does their stuff. I love Diesel, I like Suhr, I like all the companies, I like Bogner. But at the end of the day, if you're going just cool factor, it's like a 1967 GT 500. It's the coolest kid in the room, man.
Dude, if I was at the school today, you would see over my shoulder my stack of heads, and it's a PRS 50 watt H, and then I just got one of those 30 watt Marshall Plexi.
Cool.
So it just looks, just the Marshall on top of the stack just looks super sexy. So I can't argue. Delay or reverb?
Probably delay, especially if the delay is like one of those timelines and I can have a slap back on one and then probably delay. And you're just a little bit more flexible.
Fuzz or overdrive?
Ooh, overdrive.
Phaser or chorus?
Phaser.
Okay, that's the right answer. That's okay. And then the last section here is just a couple band related ones. These cause fights. I apologize. Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
Okay, John or Paul?
Paul.
Okay, I'm a Paul guy too. Bowie or Dylan?
I have to say Bowie only because my favorite versions of Dylan songs are with other people doing them.
Okay, that's a fair answer. I got three more for you. Zeppelin or Floyd?
Zeppelin.
Okay, if it were to be Pink Floyd, Dark Side or The Wall?
Wall.
Pearl Jam or Nirvana?
Pearl Jam.
Right answer. And the last one, is it Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth?
Yes.
Right answer. Dude, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been incredible. There's so much to unpack here. There's going to be so much value for the students to unpack. And I'm going to link up all your stuff at the bottom. And just thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, man. Thank you, Rob. This was super fun, bro.
Yeah, very, very incredible. Thank you so much. Stay safe. And then when there's a NAMM show again, I hope to get to meet you in real life there at some point.
Of course, my friend.
All right, brother. Be well. Thank you.